But I think we should start this session. I think we had three productive sessions before lunch. And so in this session, we're going to launch a volume titled Structural Change and Dynamics of Labor Market in Bangladesh, Studies on Labor and Employment. This publication is a compilation of papers produced under a research project titled Changing Labor Markets in Bangladesh, Understanding Dynamics in Relation to Economic Growth and Poverty. This project was funded by International Development Research Center, IDRC, Canada. And in this session, I think Dr. Selim Raihan will present this overview of this volume. And then we have two discussants, Dr. Edgard Rodriguez, Senior Program Specialist from IDRC, and also Dr. Rizwanul, a former Special Advisor, ILO, Geneva. They will discuss the paper. And we have special guests. We're very delighted to have Professor Saad Andaleeb, Vice-Chancellor, BRAC University. So we'll start with unveiling the book and take some photos, and then we'll start the session.
Thank you. Actually, the book will be distributed to you, and for your information, there is a small page inside that book. If you could write down your name and your contact details, so that we can have the information in our database. So I will give a very brief overview of what actually we did in this book. As Professor Bazlul Khondker, he mentioned that it is a kind of outcome of a research project what we did with the help of International Development Research Center, IDRC, and I'm very glad to have Dr. Edgard Rodriguez to represent IDRC here. So this is the kind of outcome of the exercise what we have done in that during almost 3 years now. And under that research project, we have produced a number of research papers. And this is a kind of compilation of those papers and try to kind of come up with a story on structural change and dynamics of labor markets in Bangladesh. So why is this book? We realized that this issue, this topic is extremely important for, when you think of, Bangladesh getting into the middle income country status and then the way towards the further development. And then what we heard this morning from eminent economists and also in different sessions, that there are several issues related to labor markets which have to be looked at very carefully when you talk about structural change and further economic growth. So I just, I'm very proud to tell you that actually under this project, a number of very young economists, I tell them economists, when they joined SANEM, they were not really economists at that stage, but they actually over time, they developed themselves and they worked with me and of course Dr. Khondker, and then actually I'm really proud of them that we all worked as a team, and then we came up with this 13 technical papers. Few of them are already have gone for their higher studies in North America or Europe, and some of them are all in the pipeline to go outside. So I can see that the process we worked over the last 2.5 years, actually that was a process of transformation, not just structural change of the economy, but also the structural change, converting kind of very young, aspiring graduates from Dhaka University Economics Department to make them kind of very young economists. So I would like to say that the way we try to look at this whole issue of structural change and dynamics of labor markets, I'm not really going into details of each chapter. It is not possible. If you have this book, but there are some key messages we try to tell through this book. One of those messages that when you talk about structural transformation, structural change, actually economic diversification is extremely crucial, and this idea has been supported by several arguments and statements in this morning when our keynote speakers actually talked about this. So we looked at the economic diversification issues, what are the challenges, and how economic diversification can really link with promotion of rural non-farm sector, promotion of different productive sector, promotion of female labor force participation, and then also in a broader perspective, how do you really get the maximum out of the demographic dividend? What Bangladesh Bangladesh passing through. So so the key message is actually, as I say, that in order to understand, in order to make Bangladesh or get into the higher growth phase and to get a kind of structural transformation or change in a kind of desired way, you need to look at those issues very carefully. What are the differences between these papers you can see in this book or volume compared to many other papers so far available? Here we actually, some of these papers we try to use some innovative methodology for the first time in Bangladesh, like kind of using pseudo panel database, combining 4 rounds of household income expenditure survey data. Also we used a kind of pseudo panel analysis using labor force survey data, and then there are different other methodologies actually we used. It's a combination, it's a whole mix of like very sophisticated econometrics, very sophisticated computable generative model techniques, and also we try to put these in the context of what are the real issues. It's not just simply doing econometrics for econometrics' sake. It is also try to understand what are the real issues there. So you can see a lot of descriptive analysis also there in each of these chapters. We didn't really want to jump into the econometric exercise before doing any descriptive analysis. We just want to understand what the data actually tells us first, before looking into trying to understand the relationships among different variables. So I'm really grateful that IDRC really gave us this opportunity in the last 3 years or so, and this is the kind of outcome of this exercise, as I mentioned. And I look forward to have this knowledge, what we gathered over the last 3 years, to disseminate further in different forums. And I'm really very happy to see very young faces here. That I'm sure that the discussion, what we have 2 eminent discussants here, and of course Professor Saad, Andaleeb, we're really grateful. He's here. So really look forward to hearing from him. I know it's a very short session. We can't have very lengthy discussion on that. But I can promise that we are actually going to take this book to many corners of the country. On 24th, we are going to launch this book at the Dhaka University. Then we are actually contacting different universities and different institutions outside of Dhaka to launch this book and to have kind of elaborated discussion. So with this, again, I thank you all. And then I'm very, I know we'll not have much time here, official time to discuss, but there are very unofficial time to talk on this. I'll be very happy to share, answer to your queries and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Selim. I think I'd like to invite Dr. Edgard Rodriguez for his comments.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. Thank you very much to Selim, in particular, the entire SANEM team in general. They have done an amazing job, and they have grown into the project. As you have heard, we at IDRC we promote research that could be meaningful for the development of Bangladesh. And we left that mandate in SANEM's hands, and it was not some terms of reference coming from outside Bangladesh telling you what you should be doing, but it was kind of knowing what you know, what are some of the things that you could be looking into and providing some evidence to make valid points that could be helping further development in Bangladesh. It's a very different perspective, the one I would say, the one that IDRC brings to the development research field. It's trying to grow from inside, a little bit of import substitution of research, trying to get the research done here that will be knowing better what the reality is and what some of the things are. So of course, you've heard some of the improvements that this type of work has brought. Methodologically, you were able to use the abundant data, maybe not perfect, but the abundant data that you have for Bangladesh, and turn it into making different use of it. And you're going to go through the different chapters, and you're going to find that they are bringing the best we have or the best we know in those areas. So in general, I mean, we're extremely happy about the product. I'm just going to make 3 more remarks and then I'll stop. But in general, we're extremely happy that the report is out, and my 3 points are going to be around why. Basically, the first main one is because it's a product of Bangladeshi researchers from different parts, different views. Of course, the economic view is definitely there, but as we have heard from earlier presenters in the conference today and some of the around town yesterday, there's also more than economics into it. There's also these political economies that we have to take into account. The effect of institutions, how institutions are really affecting economic outcomes. And I think that's definitely one of the lessons of messages that comes out from the report, is that you have to be looking more at that political economy. And sometimes the economies are not, we're not the best ones to address that, but the best economies are the ones who do not dare saying we don't know and keep on asking difficult questions. And questions like the ones that Professor Khondker had been presenting earlier in the morning in the session on economic growth. Another point why we like the report so much, it looks at the topic of women. You've heard from different speakers this morning the role of women, and you have discussed it in different forums. And in general, always comes up the same thing in the discussions for women, that women are important. And mind you, we managed to have always panels that do not have women, but hopefully we change that a little bit of the power structure or representation. But the point here is that women, you still have a very low participation of women in Bangladesh, and you're still, at the same time, you're wondering why or how you can grow even more. So the answer is almost looking at you in the face, and you have the answer right there. You have to increase that participation. So trying to find ways of how to do that is not going to be easy. There are many factors, and it's not only because things are not perfect. There are many other things, characteristics of Bangladesh that would not allow probably to change that overnight. However, that's a target. So talking about women is very important. Talking about different ways of training, giving them training opportunities to develop, that's extremely important. But remember, it also has to be customized to women's needs. Looking some of the chapters, for example, like the unpacking and paid labor, talks about the different ways in which women contribute to the economy. You have to take that into account. Some of the at least 2 other chapters look at female labor participation and find how that is increasing, but it's still that there's a lot of need for change. Now, the question is how exactly you're going to be doing that, and that's an important question or challenge that is raised. It's not necessarily answered in the book, but it is part of raising the issue. Another reason why I like, why we're very excited about the report, is a topic that has come up constantly now, and this is the demographic transition. And just the awareness of that, Bangladesh is going through a demographic transition, that it's not at the very beginning, but at the very end, as Professor Mahmoud emphasized. It's like it was sort of Bangladesh came prematurely to going through the transition and did it very fast without investing in people. And that's part of the big question you have. You have still today your allocation for education at the government level, at the national level, is extremely low at 2%, 3%. It's extremely low for international standards. So again, people who are wondering why is that we are not growing as fast, I mean, that's another answer looking at in front of you. And it refers to the need to increase the investment in the skills, but it's not only investing money for investing money. You have to find out which investments are going to be really effective. Because educating people who are older already is not going to be easy. Remedial schooling, for example, it's much more expensive than providing effective universal basic education. So there are a number of things that you will have to be thinking about of how to fight back the fact that Bangladesh is already into this demographic transition, more advanced than it should, and then the bells are going off and warning you that you have to do something. So that's going to be an issue to deal with, and here you'll have to ask education specialists elsewhere. And I hope we hear more about the skills development that Bangladesh would need. Finally, I think I just want to bring out again the reason why IDRC of Canada or any of the other donors are interested in labor. Your most important asset in Bangladesh, besides of course anything else you have in the wonderful country, is your people. And it's surprising that sometimes we forget that asset needs to be examined, discussed, and there are reasons for that. Some of those reasons have kept the poorest of the poor very much away from the benefits of rapid growth. Sometimes the rapid growth, in a way, has been benefiting from having this pool of very poor people. So as we talk very naively outside Bangladesh, let's improve the working conditions in Bangladesh. We're very naive, I have to admit that. I mean, coming from outside Bangladesh, I can say that. We're very naive that thinking, oh yeah, it looks so nice, it gives a nice way of having very, very colorful brochure on this event and make me feel good, but it's a super difficult task. And the questions that are raised, why, for example, you have a garment sector that has grown so much, but yet it's still not diversified into other sectors. You don't see that growth into other sectors. How come you're not producing enough jobs for the poor people? The person from the World Bank, Dr. Rama mentioned, you still need to produce more jobs. You still need to find more garment sectors or like sectors, and you are not finding them. So that's a big challenge. Improving working conditions will come. There's still a lot to do. The world is looking at Bangladesh to find a good example of how really workers can actually achieve not only having a good job, but a job that allows them to grow and develop fully their full potential. So I thank you very much again for the opportunity of talking about your report, and I feel very proud, of course. I mean, I feel part of it, so it's a praise on my part. But thanks very much to the team of SANEM for the book, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Edgard. And I turn to Rizwanul, former Special Advisor IDO, for his comments.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by thanking SANEM and its Chief Executive, if I may say, Dr. Selim Raihan, excuse me, for inviting me to come over today and offer a few remarks around the theme of this book, Structural Change and Dynamics of Labor Markets in Bangladesh. I would like to start by congratulating SANEM and its researchers for producing this excellent piece of work, very detailed work on labor market in Bangladesh, which includes 13 papers or chapters. If you look at the book itself, it covers a large number of issues, and as Dr. Raihan himself mentioned, uses primary data from two major surveys carried out in this country, the Household Income and Expenditure Survey and the Labour Force Survey. It has made good use of the primary data from those two surveys, uses rigorous methods, but as he himself said, it's not a book focusing on methodologies, but it analyzes issues using those methodologies. And another thing which I found very useful is that each chapter provides very succinct summaries with policy implications. For readers who don't have much time, I suppose it's very helpful. So I think it's a very important exercise in this field, and the team deserves to be congratulated. Now, coming to my role, I was really wondering before coming, what could I do in the 10 minutes that I have? And I'm still wondering, simply because it was like a game theory. I was trying to guess what might happen in Dr. Raihan's 10 minutes, but it hasn't happened. So I'm not very sure. But anyway, I thought I could, if I could use the remaining 6-7 minutes of my time in a productive manner, that's important. I could perhaps go over a couple of points or 3 issues, let's say. 3 issues that would have relevance for the topic of this volume, for this book. The first is a very basic issue, the concept, the notion of structural change. What is it that we are talking about? Of course, the answer is there, but I thought we could throw a little light on that and see what those notions mean for the economy of Bangladesh. That's the first issue that I would like to touch upon. The second issue, again very related, given the historical experience that we have, what has been the path up to now that Bangladesh has followed, and what is likely to happen? That's the second issue. And the third issue is, how close are we in Bangladesh to having a situation where we don't have any surplus labor anymore, as we have currently, because achieving full employment is one of the major aims of development and economic growth. However high the economic growth is, whether it is 6% or 7%, or even if we go to 8%, unless we can fully utilize the labor force that we have, which Edgard has referred to, that's not going to be of much help. So anyway, quickly, the first one. Here I have provided in this slide a stylized description of what happens in an economy as an economy grows. The red one, the inverted U-like curve, shows what happens to the share of manufacturing. The dotted lines, the one with big dots, the green one refers to agriculture, and the other refers to services. As an economy grows, we expect to see the share of agriculture to decline, the green one, the share of manufacturing, the red one, to rise up to a point. And after that, it's expected to decline. And I will explain why. And the share of services is supposed to increase. So that's the stylized kind of depiction. And in fact, this is based on the experience of the currently developed countries in the world. If you look at the experience of countries like UK, US, Germany, France, other Western European countries, even some of the late industrializers, the more successful of the developing countries of Asia, like Korea and Japan and so on, Taiwan, all these countries, their experience actually corroborates what I'm depicting here. And I don't need to go into the details. I had some data, but I don't think we have the time to go over the data. But just to tell you very briefly, even the developing countries which have recently developed, Korea for example, the peak share of manufacturing in GDP was about 23%. It went up to 23%. And in Taiwan, it went up to as high as 32%. And where is Bangladesh at this moment? It is 16.4% according to 2013 labor force survey, which has just come out. You will not see this result here because this is based on 2010. And now we have the 2013 data. Also, but I didn't see this figure here. So anyway, so that's where we stand. Whether we can go up to 23% like Korea or 32% like Taiwan is a very critical question. Or whether something will happen even before that. And that brings me to my second point, the danger of what is known as premature deindustrialization. The hump and leaving that hump soon. At what point does an economy do that? And here if you see the point S1 basically and Y1 refers to the developed countries which we saw in the middle of the 20th century. But then some economists are pointing it out that currently developing countries, the share of manufacturing in GDP starts declining much earlier, not at Y1, at perhaps Y2, and not when it reaches S1, but even when it reaches S2. And they cite the examples of Brazil, India, and so on and so forth, where it has started declining already. Now, does Bangladesh face that possibility or danger, as I say? One has to be very, very circumspect when we talk about policies and so on and so forth, whether just one manufacturing industry is good enough to take us up to, let's say, Y1, or whether we face the danger of starting the decline at Y2. So that's a question that I leave here. And the third question is, what's the situation of the labor market in Bangladesh? I hear a lot about this. A lot of people keep saying that wage rates are increasing, real wage rates are increasing, and the labor market in Bangladesh is becoming tight, has become tight. It's very difficult to get workers and so on, particularly in the peak seasons of agriculture and so on and so forth. Now, of course, that's good news if it's happening. That should be the goal. That's where we want to reach. That labor market will be tight, it will be difficult to get workers, you will have to raise wages, real wages will have to increase, and so on and so forth. But is that really happening? And there is some data in the book here, although I'm not sure whether it has been fully analyzed, and that also shows a little suspicion. And in some of my writings, last couple of years, I have been raising this suspicion, whether the labor market, particularly in relation to manufacturing and the availability of labor at low cost to the manufacturing sector, is really becoming tight. I think there is a figure here on page 17. It's very difficult to see properly because it has been compressed into a very short space, and I hope we can look at this issue in some more details, and we will see that there was a possibility of real wages increasing after 2007-8, but the big question is whether that is being sustained, and particularly in the manufacturing sector. And my suspicion is that manufacturing sector still has a possibility of getting labor at a constant or not very sharply rising real wages. So that's where we stand, and we need to diversify the manufacturing sector a lot, and a good deal has been already spoken, and you will find a lot in this volume, but I think I can stop here for the moment. And thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Rizwanul, for excellent presentation and some issues that, raising some issues, interesting issues, deindustrialization, and also what it means by structural change. We'll now take some questions from the floor, and we'll have 10 minutes for that. And please introduce yourself and be very brief.
Thank you. My name is Kishore Kumar Boshak. I'm from Center for Policy Dialogue. I have a question to Professor Selim Raihan. We have observed that the unemployment rate is around 4% for Bangladesh for like 20 years or more. For like 20 years or more, the unemployment rate is 4%. So, can you tell me why this is exactly at the 4% level? Unemployment rate is I have really trouble myself finding the 20 years or more, for like 20 years or more, the unemployment rate is 4%. So, can you tell me why this is?
I'm sorry that I came late, but Rizwan bhai, I was impressed by by your deliberations, and that brings me to the question about the labor market tightening. If you look at the 2013 labor force survey, we see that the labor force participation of women has come down. This is quite surprising compared to the previous ones. I don't know, because we are thinking whether there was some discrepancies or differences with regard to the methodology which has been pursued in the previous LFSS and this one. But the fact remains that it is very surprising that the women's labor participation in 2013 has come down. Now, is it connected with some of the rigidities in the labor market that we see, particularly in the rural areas and the agriculture real wages going up? At least it has seasonality, but the trend is that it has gone up. So I would like to hear your interpretation, please. Thank you.
My question is with regard to the digitization. Whether digitization will create more unemployment or it will create more opportunities through outsourcing, for example. My question is directed to all of you. Thank you.
I think this is a difficult area. Actually, a lot of people are not very comfortable with labor economics and labor market issues. So we have 3 questions, but I think I'll now request our special, before giving floor to the Discussants and Selim, I will request Professor Andaleeb, Sir Saad Andaleeb, to provide his remarks and comments. Okay, I think then we'll go for the contributions.
Okay, thank you. I think I really appreciate those questions, and I am quite sure that while reading the book you will have many more questions. Unemployment rate, I think probably best person to answer is Professor Dr. Rizwanul Islam, And because I know I have interacted with him quite a lot, and also people with BBS, whether this unemployment rate make any sense, this 4%, so I think it's a kind of more of a methodological issue, but I think it doesn't really make much sense for a country like Bangladesh. Second one, in 2013, I think I know Dr. Rizwanul Islam, he'll respond to Professor Mustafiz Rahman's question, but I can just share my experience while working with this data. If you look at 2013 data, you are right that the labor force participation rate of female has gone down. One interesting part of female labor force participation is that large chunk of it is actually unpaid family labor, big part. And in 2010, compared to 2010, between comparison to 2010 and 13, you can see that actually the unpaid family labor has gone down. And so whether it really contributed to that overall decline in female labor force participation. The reason I'm saying, I raised that issue yesterday also while we had a workshop here, and also people from BBS, they were present. And I raised the issue that if you compare the methodologies used in different labor force surveys, these are not consistent. Every year, actually, every report survey, unfortunately, BBS has come up with kind of different methodologies. Whereas when you look at the methodology of the household income and expenses survey, it has been kind of consistent over the last 4 rounds. So that's why we even found that while doing many labor market dynamics analysis, some of the data of HIES, they tend to perform better than labor force survey data. So I'm just posing this question to representative of BBS, how do they deal with that? And third question on the digitalization, there is a risk, of course, when you go for kind of skill-intensive employment, there is a risk, of course, like the kind of job which were available for unskilled labor, they were going to lose them. So it's a kind of issue of what happens in the short run and what happens in the long run. So in the long run, if you can really improve the skill, status of general people as a whole, then I think those risks can be minimized. But in the short run, of course, there can be some risks.
Would you like to add something on the digitalization or your experience?
Yes, very quickly.
On the issue of women's labor participation, I think we have to look very carefully at the methodology, but also it's incredible how you're already looking at a very low figure for the women's labor participation in general. So that should be the main concern. And then once you start digging into the data, you find very unsettling facts like this one about the unpaid, the reduction in unpaid work involvement. But it's not. Why is it happening? It's the part that we still don't know by looking at the figures. So continue digging into that. Very important. Do you want to touch base on the technological question about what's going to happen? I mean, nobody knows. For countries where we do not have a lot of labor already, the question is very welcome to have, when are we having the next technological change to save labor? The problem is going to be for economies like Bangladesh, and you definitely have to be paying attention to that. I don't think that anybody is actually looking at what is happening on the changes in technology and what that affects a country like a labor-abundant country like Bangladesh. And I think that could be a next area of at least investigation for you, looking at that. What would happen if, hopefully, it's not going to, could be a very sudden deindustrialization. If something like this were to happen, in which you may be able to produce, things, at least in terms of labor, absorption of labor would not happen. And the main message for the economy of Bangladesh is that you have to find industries where you can employ more people, not fewer of them.
Yeah, I would now request Dr. Rizwanul Islam to respond to some of this question of unemployment, full employment, and also the underemployment issues.
Thank you. Quickly, the question on unemployment rate has already been addressed by Dr. Raihan. I would simply like to add to that, yes, it is the result of the methodology that is applied, the way surveys are carried out, and the definition of open unemployment rate. there is a universally accepted definition. If you were a respondent in a survey like that, you would be asked several questions. Whether during the last 1 week you were engaged in any work of this kind, even if it is for an hour, you would be recorded as employed. If you haven't worked even for an hour, then you would have to qualify by another two criteria, that were you looking for work and were you available for work. Now think of a poor peasant or an agricultural worker. What does it mean to him when it is asked, were you looking for work? He would be perplexed. So obviously you can imagine how these responses are recorded. And the other more formal reason is that if, for example, I'm not employed, I'm unemployed, is there any unemployment insurance or anything that I can fall back on in this country or in such countries? There is nothing. So one actually does not register himself or herself as unemployed, as one would have, for example, in Canada or US or UK. If you are not employed, you register yourself as unemployed. But here, one tries to find something to eke out a living. So one can't, by definition, one can't be unemployed. I'm surprised that we still have 4% unemployment rate. Second question, and in fact, there are three questions here. Decline in female labor force participation in 2013, whether it is due to the rigidities in the labor market. I'm not very sure what you mean by rigidities in the labor market. We have to be very clear. And then you added whether it is due to rising real wages in rural areas. I'm afraid it's very difficult within the span of this time frame to go into all this. But let me very quickly mention at least something related to the decline in female labor force participation rate. One shouldn't perhaps react too much by looking at 2 points data, 2010 and 2013. Yes, if you look at these 2 points, there has been a decline in 2013. But look at the trend, 2002, if not earlier, and then 2005, 10, 13. If you do that, there was perhaps a kind of rise hump in 2010 and then a little decline. But if you draw a kind of trend line with all these data, you will see a rising trend. So at least I would tend to, and I hope if that's the case, that there is a rising trend. There may have been a kind of aberration for some reason or the other. We haven't fully analyzed the 2013 data yet. It could be a variety of reasons. Could be an increase in enrollment in education, because in this country we have a lot of programs, serious effort going into increasing the enrollment of girls in schools and so on and so forth. And I should add that this, you can see this kind of experience in other developing countries, including in India. So it can happen temporarily for a variety of reasons. What is important to see is that employment opportunities for women don't decline. When we talk about economic diversification, industrial diversification, there is a danger. For example, within the government sector, when there is a structural change from woven to knitwear, a lot of this can be done better by men, and there may be a tendency for substitution of women by men. So there may be factors like that. So we need to look at these a little more carefully. Now the other questions, I'm afraid most of this it's not easy to answer within a short time like this. But rigidities, if you are talking about rigidities in the sense of hiring, firing, and so on and so forth, that's the standard definition of rigidity. I'm afraid Bangladesh has perhaps one of the most flexible labor markets in the world. You can just tell someone that not from next star, you are not required. So I don't think that could be the reason for the decline in female labor force participation. Likewise, rising real wages in rural areas, as I mentioned already, we need to be very careful while we look at the data, particularly in the last 2-3 years, whether this rising trend has sustained. I haven't done full-fledged work on rural labor markets, but whenever I go to villages, I ask questions, and I'm not very sure whether this suspicion or apprehension of rising real wages is really that serious. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now turn to Professor Syed Saad Andaleeb, Vice-Chancellor of BRAC University, to provide his remarks as special guest.
First of all, thank you very much to SANEM for inviting me. When I was first invited, I was wondering, why am I being invited? This is the South Asian Network for Econometric Models. But then when I heard the word models, I began to become a little more excited, because now we're going to be talking about research, I suppose, and I think this is an area that really excites me, in the sense that I'm going to speak from my heart actually today. I have really nothing deeply prepared, but having been a researcher for roughly 30 years of my life, I thought this would be a wonderful place to sort of share some of the interesting challenges that I'm facing in the academic environment. And I think I can link all of these to some of these questions that have been raised. Let me start with a small quote, I think. This is from Khalil Gibran, a very well-known Arab philosopher. He says that the true wealth of a nation lies not in its gold and silver, but in its learning, wisdom, and the uprightness of its sons. I want to repeat that one more time. The true wealth of a nation lies not in its gold and silver, but in its learning, its wisdom, and the uprightness of its son. Today is about learning and wisdom. That's one thing that really excited me, because I do see at the university level some things that intrigues me a little bit, bothers me a little bit, and I want to sort of emphasize that in the sense that I see what my faculty members teach, where they teach from, and most of it I see is from foreign books, and most of it is I see they're using foreign literature, foreign journals, and I'm not sort of discounting this, but I'm asking, where is my literature? Where are my books? Where are my journals? Where are my theories? Where are my applications of these theories? So essentially, and it may be there, and it may exist, but in the university environment, I do not see much of it. And as a result of it, I can only assume that we are importing or borrowing a lot of knowledge from overseas. If we are borrowing such knowledge from overseas, I'm wondering whether that can sustain, guide, and revitalize my society. So my emphasis to my university faculty has been, simply from the day I came, is let's produce some indigenous knowledge. Where is my local data, local knowledge, local theory? You'll probably see that BRAC University is the only one that has put up all its research on record. It's on the website. And there was a deeper interest in doing that. Number one, I can hold my faculty responsible every year, saying you did so many last year, why haven't you done as much this year? But also at the same time, I think I'm opening up BRAC University's work to challenge other universities. Show us what you're doing. Let's see what's out there in terms of the knowledge environment. I think we are in a knowledge era. If we do not pursue knowledge strongly enough, we are not going to be up there. And I think I can relate that to some of the issues that were being raised. First, let me just address very quickly the three questions with some of my experiences. One of the issues was about this, why is the labor unemployment rate 4%, and I think very importantly it has been answered that it may be the methodological issue. But more importantly, I think it requires corroboration. And I think it needs corroboration from multiple sources. That's one of the, I don't know if that has been done, if it's been done only by the Bureau of Business Studies. The issue is, why should we only rely on their data? So that's the one thing that I think universities should be doing. That's one of the things that institutes and other research centers, they're the ones who should be doing. And I think very interestingly, taking the cue from Professor Islam, is that what questions are asked when you are trying to address the issue of unemployment. I think there is a simpler way, and this has just occurred to me as I was thinking. Perhaps what you could do is, you could ask just one question: what were you doing yesterday between this and this hour? That's it. And given the answers that come, you know that all those answers will show you partly which ones can be categorized into they were working or they were not working. One question. This is just a methodology issue, and I'm sure we could have a day-long discussion on just that. But the other question about the digitalization, somebody raised about, is that going to lead to outsourcing? Very interestingly, my CAC students, my computer science and engineering students, they're not looking for jobs. You know why? Because they go to work at 8 p.m. and they work all night. There's a group of them who found something overseas. They don't want to work here because they are now being paid in foreign currency. This is what I've heard, and when I heard this, I said, "My goodness, this is really exciting." So this is probably the digitalization, at least as of now. I think there are tremendous benefits to read. About the tight labor market that Professor Mustafiz raises a very interesting issue that I had right in this room. About a year ago, I was asked by one of the participants. They said that, Vice-Chancellor, why do you produce students that we do not need? So I was a little stumped, but I got back to him. And I said to him, why should I give you students that you need when you have no participation in my university? What have you done for my university that I should give you students that you need? That was only a retort. I did not mean that in the sense, but I think he raised a very, very important question. So the labor market, I don't know if it's tight or not. I think we don't produce enough good quality people who go and fit into that market. I think the market, like very interestingly has been pointed out, is dynamic, it's changing, but our universities seem to be very static. They have syllabus that is 10 years old. How come we're not reviewing our syllabi? How come we're not approaching academic institutions the way that they do in the Western world? Let me give you one example. I have challenged BRAC University now to make sure that my 5,000 students who will be graduating, I am very interested in what education they get. And in that education, I'm interested in 5 things. I want 5,000 of my students to graduate with just 5 things. What are they? Critical thinking. They must be able to solve problems. I want them to be great communicators. They must be able to express themselves. They must be able to convey their ideas in the best way they can. I believe everybody, including majors from history, English, what have you, they must have some quantitative skills because the world around have to be linked with numbers. Number 4, I want them to have technological awareness. They should be able to handle computers, go to websites, go present themselves, make PowerPoints, all those things that are very basic skills. And the fifth thing I want them to have is global awareness. Every student should be tested on those 5 skills before they go. That's when we'll have a labor market that will be able to adjust and adapt itself much better to be able to meet the needs of the demands of the market. Right now we don't have that kind of thinking. All we have is we give them lectures in the classroom, they take notes, they regurgitate, and we give them a certificate. When they go out in the market, a large majority of them, unfortunately, have no clue why they went into higher education, what they learned there, and what they can do with it. So I'm faced with a tremendous challenge to provide employment opportunities for my students. I'm interested in the success of my students. And I have to ask myself, what should I do to be able to make my students successful? That should answer your labor market question. And I don't think that we are preparing enough students with the right skills to be able to address the needs of the market. That being said, I will just briefly come back to this whole idea, and this relates to all this discussion again. I think I was very interested to look at all the things that are going on based on this report, the structural changes, economic diversification going on, the whole idea of major supply side constraints, entitlement failure, and all that. I think I missed one thing here, which I would have been much more excited about. What are we doing with human capital development? The issue, as I go over this about 18 points here, only one article piqued my interest on that area when it says, how do education and skill development affect the transition from good enough job to decent job? I think, and even there, it does not quite go deeply into the notion of human capital development. I think fundamentally what we are not doing right, this country is developing our human resources properly. If we can, and that ties into what Edgard said about the whole idea that people are most important. What are we focusing on? We are focusing on things that are not as important, maybe. I mean, what can you do with all the resources of the world if my people don't know how to use them? So we have to start thinking about transformation of our human capital. How can we make them bring much more value addition to the economy? This is the place where, and it's not to be done by one or other institution. It's not just left, you can't just blame primary education teachers or secondary education teachers or higher education. This is for society. Society is to engage in this. There are multiple stakeholders, and if all stakeholders do not engage, we're not going to have what we want. So I think we need many more conversations between multiple stakeholders. And I'll give you some examples actually. Very, very interesting stuff that I unearthed. I wrote a short piece in the op-ed in the Daily Star. I was looking at what's going on in Malaysia. Malaysian research universities are boosting economic growth by being solution providers to society, industry, and government. The purpose of establishing Malaysian research universities is to produce more PhDs, to drive the industry, and move towards a knowledge-based economy. Very interestingly, and look at this, in Malaysia now there are 97,000 international students pursuing a PhD. And the faculty in collaboration with the PhD students produce solutions for individuals, the community, small and medium enterprises, and NGOs. I ask, we don't even have PhD programs, particularly in the private sector. The University Grants Commission will not allow us to produce even MPhil students. So what happens? My younger faculty member who come to the university as faculty, in 3 years they know that they will not get a promotion if they don't have a PhD. So what do? They go overseas. 99% do not come back. And the process keeps going on. I think we know where the problems are. We're not grappling with them enough. We need to grapple with them We need to really understand what are our goals, what are our missions, what are our objectives. That's when we are going to basically change this. One other short piece of information that you'll all probably enjoy. I did a small sample survey about research in academia. 40% of the faculty that I asked them how many national publications do you have, 40% said they have 0 publications. 40%. 75% of them have published 3 or fewer articles in local journals, which, as you know, are not always very reliable. And then, as far as international publications go, 50% have 0 international publications, while 22% have only 1 international publication. So that is the state of research in the universities. And this is not just BRAC University, this is a sampling of a number of universities. And look at what they're doing, by the way. 65% of the teachers teach more than 4+ courses. Some of them are teaching 5 courses, 6 courses. When will they do research? So research, if you really want an environment that is going to drive an activity that is the soul of an university and that drives society, we don't have that as much. So I will conclude by saying that I congratulate this effort. I'd like to see much more of this. I would really emphasize that we need to have very strong indigenous research. I would like to stress that we need to have, and I would like to urge IDRC to sort of help out with methodology workshops more than anything else. My people don't know how to do research. In the graduates who come out of these tens of universities all over the country, large majority of them are just not equipped to do research. They really don't understand how to answer questions. And the third thing I think we need is quality outlets for research. I'm not sure if we can name 1 or 2 high quality journals that have been produced here in Bangladesh that would meet international standards. So again, pardon me if I sound harsh. I'm back here in this country after 30 years, and I have a different lens probably. But this lens is putting things in a perspective that may be asking a little much. But I think we must have honest conversations. And these are the things that I bring to my board of trustees all the time. I bring it to my faculty all the time. I bring it to my heads of department. I address my students all the time. You want to change this society, you must change. And that change has not happened. We need to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Syed Andaleeb, providing some interesting insight on the research capabilities of our university colleagues and also need for human development. I have to conclude this session, but as I said, I'm not an expert in labor economics or labor issues. But I think as a member of SANEM team, I also take pride of producing this volume. I think if you, as Saad was telling, actually we grew up in the same area, so I used to call him Saad. And so I think this volume also gives a lot of interesting insight into research methodology also. We have used varieties of research methodology in this volume, starting from pseudo panel and also microeconometric analysis. Also link that with the macro meso level stuffs like social accounting metrics and also geometrical modeling, all those things. And you will find interesting blend of all those research methodologies. So I think it's a very good book also for the students and also who wants to pursue further studies into this area. And also we are happy to bring in a new methodology into the whole thing, is that national transfer account. Trying to see the demographic issues more deeper rather than just seeing from the top level. So that's so I think that is also very important. I think addition to the indigenous research thing that Saad was talking about. So, and we have provided, I think, as Selim and Dr. Rizwanul was saying that we have provided summary and policy implication for each of these paper. I think Selim was talking that we also go different parts of Bangladesh to promote this volume. One important area will be to link with the policy maker, because that's very important. There are a lot of evidence in this volume. I think they need to see this evidence, and perhaps they will be encouraged to change the way they are doing policy design now. Thank you very much. We have 2 more sessions. Okay, I forgot that we have to present requests to our guests.
First of all, I would like to request the chair to hand over the quest to Professor Syed, Saad, Andaleeb. Then to Dr. Rizwanul Islam. After that, Dr. Edgard Rodriguez.